Hey guys, this is going to be the first video for the intermediate series of difficulty. This one's kind of interesting too. I like this pattern quite a bit because it almost has like a three-dimensional effect where you can kind of see this kind of like a 3D cube and like the different pieces all kind of connect into the neighboring shapes. So pretty cool little pattern, and we're going to approach this one a little differently here. And instead of us trying to like manually build these little kind of L shapes, we're going to use something called the 3D cube inside of Designer. Now I've already got like the project set up, so what I'm going to do is just hop in here, we're going to hit space, we're going to type in 3D, and I want this guy down here, 3D cube, or sorry, cube 3D. Now we're going to make this, and you can see how this is almost giving us like a grayscale representation of kind of the shading of a three-dimensional cube. It's not actually 3D, it's just a kind of a cool way for us to like move this guy around if we ever wanted to like pull this for some type of information. So I'm going to kind of reset it, and what I'm going to do is just move the Y down a little bit because I kind of want to get more of a V on that top part. So I'm trying to get the dip right here. So all those corners and angles should feel relatively similar, and I think this is a pretty good spot. Once we have the shape down, we're going to select it, we're going to do an edge detect, and we're going to pull down the roundness. Let's just thicken up that edge a little more. We'll maybe do a value of 3, I think. Let's just double check it. 3 is probably pretty good. Yeah, that should be fine. So I have that down. Now from here, what I need to do is get a selection of all the space around it and the 3 sides to the cube. That's going to enable us to start creating these cutout patterns to kind of take this chunk out of the corner. Now to do this, what I'm going to do is connect this into a flood fill node. Now I did cover this in one of the beginner videos, but if you happen to not see that one, basically what the flood fill is going to do is it allows us to select those different white shapes so then I can then somehow reuse those later on. So I'm just having this go to a flood fill, and from here I want this to go into a flood fill random grayscale. Okay, so let's do that. Connect it. So you can see each one of these guys has different values. Now they're a little too similar in a couple, so maybe what I'm going to do is just click through the seed. I don't care for how close those are. Just get it to the point where they all feel different. Like right here is probably, well, those two are pretty close. I can probably work with this one right here. We'll try this guy. Alright, I kind of found one that's going to work fairly well. Now from here, we're going to take this guy and we're going to try to select those individual gray values. We're going to use something called Histogram Select. Now the way this thing kind of works is it's trying to pull from a value on that image. So for example, if I bring the range down, because I don't want it to select too many different pieces together, we're going to keep the contrast really high, and then I'm going to try to get just the background, and you'll notice kind of conveniently at 0.5 it has it, but see how when I move this around it's kind of hopping around between the different pieces, and 0 means it's getting the black border, but I can kind of select everything with this guy. So let's just leave this at 0.5 because that happened to work for the background. Now I'm going to click on it, we're going to duplicate this for the other sections. So I'm going to select it, we're going to do Command D, Command D, Command D. Okay, so I have 4 total. And we're just going to do this piece by piece. We're going to click on this one, and now that I'm kind of looking at it, let's move the position until we get the top part of the cube. Right there. Click on this one. This is going to be the left part of the cube. Okay, and this will be the right. See, that is darker, so I probably need to go down. There it is. Those are my 4 pieces. Now what I can do is try to subtract away all the information. So what I'm looking for here is I only want these 3 pieces. I need to take a chunk out of all the corners. So let's start by making a blend node. We're going to move this down here, and then I'm going to pull this edge detect from way earlier into the background. Now notice how when I do that, how this is just kind of slicing through some of my nodes. Looks a little bit messy, right? Let's hold down Option Shift, and you'll see how when I do that, this allows me to click on this little yellow dot, and if I click on that, I can now have this separate point, and I'm just going to move that down here. Now this isn't really affecting anything as far as like the result of, you know, what the final pattern is going to look like. These are just really cool ways for you to kind of redirect a graph line to help keep things organized so you don't have a lot of like overlapping node connections. So it's just a visual thing to keep it kind of clean. Now, since I have this as the background, I'm going to take this guy and connect it into the foreground. So I'm pulling from that top one, the background Histogram Select. And we're going to pick Subtract. Now, you'll notice when I do that, that subtracted out all the white, because it's subtracting that white there, which is turning it to black. Let's do this again. Blend. And I'm going to connect this one into the foreground and watch what happens when I put this next blend to subtract. And remove the cap, but look at the reference. We don't want the whole cap taken out. We want to take a corner of the cap out. So this means all we've got to do is on that piece, let's drop in a transform 2D after it. Let's go back here, so we're viewing it. Select the transform 2D from this shape, and if I hold shift and kind of move it up, we're going to get it right about there. And I'm just kind of guessing at the moment. Well, we can fix this later. Let's do the same thing here. So this also needs a transform 2D. This one also needs the same thing. And let's just set up our blends. So we're going to have like a chain of these kind of in a row. Blend. This one is now the next one to go in the foreground. Let's put it to subtract. Okay, so it's taken that out. Let's click on the transform. And this one I'm going to have to move diagonally. And I just want to get it right about like that. Maybe a little more. That feels about right. Okay. And one more time. Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about that. That seems to match kind of what we're seeing here pretty close. Now, really the last step is now that we have that shape working, you can tell this will tile because it's tiling it in the reference. So our trick is to figure out how to get this to tile. So just kind of break this down, look at the repeating patterns. How many different rows and columns do we see? I'm seeing 4 columns. Now the rows are staggered. They kind of zigzag a little bit, but there's 1, 2, 3, and the 4th one kind of repeats down to the bottom. But this really is just a 4x4 grid. So this means what I'm hoping we can do is after this guy, we're going to make a tile generator, and we're going to make sure this is going in the pattern input, not the background. Change it to image input. Let's make this a 4x4. And I want to stagger these, right? So this second and fourth column need to kind of be shifted vertically. So we're going to come down here. Let's look for the offset. See how they're not shifting vertically? They're shifting horizontally. Turn on vertical offset. So now when you move it, they're vertical. Let's do 0.5. See how they're staggered? Now we can go to the scale and just boost up the shape. And you can kind of see we're already getting pretty close here. And I'm just going to scale that up right until it feels like the gap is about the same as that edge detect. And that looks about right. Now there is a gap on the sides. We can fix this with the interstice Y. Oh, sorry, not interstice Y, interstice X. So X is your horizontal. Now I can only go in, so I want to do the opposite. Let's do a negative 0.5. Just type it in, and now kind of slide that around, and right about there looks pretty good. I need to kind of maybe play around with that scale a little bit. Let's boost this up just a little more, and then get that. I think one of my shapes is a little off. I think it's this top one. See, I'm having a little bit of an issue getting that to have the right thickness. So let me just kind of boost up this scale just a little bit here. We're going to fix that. Right there. Okay, that looks right. This is the problem on the top. That's easy to fix. We're going to go to this top transform. So I'm just selecting it, but I'm still looking at the tile generator. I'm just going to hold shift and drag it up. So let's go down, down. Seems a little crunched. I think what I need to do is, let me check my interstice again. I might have one of these just a tiny bit off. It's really close. I'm kind of nitpicking right now. And I think it's this scale is the issue. Yeah, let's bring that back. Let me go adjust this again. Okay, now let me try going back to the X and see if I can fix that. Yeah, that feels pretty close. Let me try doing a negative on this and see if I can kind of play around with this guy too. Yeah, that definitely helps once I kind of get that Y in there. And I could also go to these side shapes and kind of move those around if I felt like the side was just a little off. And I think that may have been the problem. I think one of these sides wasn't quite in the right spot. There we go. That's a little closer. So it's a little kind of bouncing back and forth between these guys and the settings on that tile generator. But overall, just kind of double checking here, I think we've got it. Yeah, that looks pretty darn close. All right, that's going to do it for pattern number 4.